What's going on, guys? This is Josh. Welcome to Treksplained. For today's video, we'll be talking about an episode of Star Trek, the original series called Space Scene. It is the first appearance of Khan! It is episode 22 of the first season. Without further ado, let me explain something for you.
So Space Seed starts out with the Enterprise trying to track down a derelict vessel with a Morse code signal. They find it floating in space and approach it. Kirk and Spock make references to how old it is and determine it's the old DY-100 class space vessel, never equipped with the ability to leave a solar system. The last such vessel was launched in the 1990s. Keep in mind that this episode takes place in 2267, so this vessel is around 275 years old. Kirk and Spock talk about what it's doing here, hypothesizing that it's either a derelict left with an automatic message or simply being used by aliens. Kirk speaks with McCoy over the intercom, and McCoy tells him that there are heartbeats registering from the derelict, but they're too slow for humans. Spock does a quick study of the vessel and determines there is equipment running on it. Kirk orders all decks to full alert. The Enterprise pulls up alongside the derelict, and that's where the credits begin. Kirk makes a log stating that there's been no notice of the Enterprise by the derelict, but maintains an alert status as a precautionary measure. McCoy comes to the bridge and talks about the slow heartbeats and lack of breathing apparently being registered. Spock states that the name of the vessel is the SS Botany Bay, but there is no such vessel listed from a launch. They talk briefly about the eugenics wars that happened during that period of time. McCoy and Spock have a brief argument, as they often do, about the eugenics wars, but Kirk interrupts them and tells the helmsman to lock onto the Botany Bay with a tractor beam. Kirk leaves to board the vessel and tells Spock he's in command. He asks McCoy if he wants to come, and McCoy responds with, "Well, if you're actually giving me a choice," to which Kirk cuts him off saying, "I'm not." He tells Spock to send an historian to the transporter room too. Spock summons Lieutenant MacGyvers to the transporter room right when she's about to start painting. In the transporter room, Scotty notices that the ship seems to be turning on. Heat, atmosphere, all turning on, as if the ship is expecting them. Kirk asks McCoy, aka Bones, if he's ready, and McCoy responds with no. He wants to practice medicine, not have his atoms scattered across space. Quick side note, McCoy is well known for being transporter phobic. He really hates the transporter, doesn't trust it. He will still use it when necessary, but avoids it whenever possible. Oh, another quick note for those just getting into Star Trek. The transporter is essentially a teleporting device. It can beam people from one location to another. It converts matter into energy and then back again at the destination location. Alright, back to the story. MacGyver shows up in the transport room, and her, Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty all transport to the Botany Bay. They discover that the entire crew of the Botany Bay are in sleep chambers, in a state of hibernation. Scotty notes the mechanics of the ship to the captain, and MacGyver notes the history of sleeper ships. MacGyver points out one particular unit is waking up its passenger. It is assumed that this person would be the leader. The leader would be revived first, historically. She notes that he's probably a Sikh. They were fantastic warriors. She's rather smitten and distracted by his physical appearance. The sleeper unit begins breaking, and so Kirk breaks into the unit and pulls out the sleeper. The sleeper wakes up and asks how long he's been asleep. Kirk responds with an estimate of 2 centuries, which is actually less than what we said, like we established earlier. McCoy and the sleeper beam back to the Enterprise. McCoy does some quick medical work in the sickbay and notes that the sleeper has miraculous healing and recovery abilities. Kirk, on the bridge, talks to Scotty about any records, but there aren't any. 72 people are still alive, but the other sleeper units had broken, and those people passed away. Spock goes over the historical records again, but can't find any reference to an SS Botany Bay. They talk about why there was no such record, and that the Botany Bay was the name of the penal colony in Australia. Was it a prison vessel? Maybe. It would be a waste of an advanced ship at the time. Spock can't come up with any other theory, though. Kirk says to set course for Starbase 12. Kirk goes to sickbay to speak with the sleeper. The sleeper is still asleep. I'm saying sleep a lot. The sleeper is still asleep, but recovering. MacGyver comes by to see him too. Kirk berates MacGyvers for not paying attention fully on the Botany Bay. McCoy watches. After MacGyver leaves, McCoy remarks that Kirk could have been a fair psychologist if he wasn't a captain. Kirk responds with, fair? And Kirk leaves and McCoy jots down some notes. In the other room, the sleeper wakes up and gets out of bed and stretches. The sleeper hears McCoy talking in the other room and grabs a scalpel before going back to bed. McCoy comes in to check on him and the sleeper holds the scalpel to his neck. McCoy's like, whatever, and tells him, choke me or cut my throat. Make up your mind. The sleeper remarks that McCoy is speaking English. McCoy tells him, cut the parotid artery behind the left ear. The sleeper releases him and says he likes a brave man. I think he's coming on to him. McCoy tells him he's on the Enterprise and the Botany Bay is in tow. They talk about how long he's been asleep and that he has questions for the captain. McCoy calls Kirk back down, and when he gets there, they talk about everything that's happened. The sleeper demands to wake up the rest of his crew, but Kirk says not until they reach Starbase 12. Kirk asks the sleeper his name, to which he responds with Khan. Just Khan, no other name. He says he's tired, but would like to study something, read something. Kirk shows him the library monitor next to the desk and leaves. Back on the bridge, Kirk and Spock talk about Khan. At least they have a name to go by. They talk about the eugenics wars and how the augmented humans at the time tried to take over the world before eventually being overthrown. How superior ability breeds superior ambition. Spock notes that there were 80 or 90 Supermen unaccounted for when the war stopped. About how many were on the Botany Bay. Lieutenant Marla MacGyver visits Khan in sickbay. She tries to talk about historical facts, but Khan begins flirting with her. Hey baby, why is your hair up? I prefer it down. Next scene, a formal dinner is being prepared to welcome Khan to this century. Kirk and McCoy discuss Khan's effect on MacGyvers and how it could possibly cause trouble later on, but there are no regulations against romance. Snoo is A-okay. In MacGyver's quarters, Khan visits her. He compliments her artistic talents and notes that her hair is down now, just for him. He notes how many bold and powerful men she paints, including him. But he warns her. Such men dare take what they want. And then he kisses her. #MeToo. Now at the dinner table, they discuss the eugenics wars with Khan. Was it tyranny, or was it unifying humanity? Spock grills him with questions while Kirk observes. Khan notices this and states, "You're an excellent tactician, Captain. You let your second-in-command attack, while you sit and watch for weakness." Kirk finally grills him, too, about Khan being weak and leaving the Earth when it would have needed courage. Khan snaps and yells about how his kind would have brought the world order. Khan stands up and leaves and says he's tired. Later, MacGyver shows up in Khan's quarters. They talk about the dinner. She apologizes and they get into a little argument. He forces her to ask permission to stay, to which she does. He forces her on her knees and demands she opens her heart to him. Tells her that he plans on taking over the ship. What an abusive relationship. Oh my goodness. In a briefing room, the bridge crew now discusses who Khan is. Through record tapes, they found out that this is Khan Noonien Singh, one of the most powerful of the augments at the time. From 1992 through 1996, he was the absolute ruler of more than a quarter of the Earth, Asia and the Middle East. And he was the final tyrant to be overthrown. Kirk, Scotty, and McCoy admit to an admiration of the guy, while Spock is appalled at the very idea. They try to explain admiration doesn't mean they would support him, but they can just appreciate what he was about. Spock does not get it. Kirk orders 24-hour security around Khan's quarters. Next scene, Kirk visits Khan in his quarters. They discuss the new security presence. Kirk tells him he knows exactly who he is now. Then they talk about the purpose of the Botany Bay's launch. Khan tells Kirk that he, and all humans, are still inferior to him, even with the technological advancements. Kirk leaves. Khan waits a moment, focuses his energy, and then forces the door open while simultaneously knocking out the guard posted outside. Khan meets MacGyver's in the transporter room. They take out the tech and then beam over to the Botany Bay and release the rest of the augmented. Although how they could have timed this together is kind of crazy. Like, how did she know Kirk just left? Kirk is notified on the bridge that Khan escaped. Kirk asks to sound security alert, but Lieutenant Uhura tells him communication channels are jammed. Kirk tries to leave the bridge, but they're jammed too. Oxygen is also cut off. Engineering has overridden everything. Kirk calls down there, but Scotty gets knocked out as Khan answers the comm. They have taken over engineering. Seems like our heroes are trapped on the bridge and unable to do anything. In a space scene, the Enterprise releases the Botany Bay from their tractor beam and it floats away. No need for that anymore if the Augments have taken over the Enterprise. On the bridge, Kirk makes his final log entry commending everyone on the bridge, but passes out just before finishing it. Khan is lecturing about how much better a man he is to the bridge crew in a conference room. Oh, what arrogance. What amazing arrogance. They demand to see Captain Kirk. Khan demands that Uhura activate the view screen. She silently refuses, but is forced to sit in the communications chair and is slapped around by one of the augments until MacGyver speaks up. The view screen is activated, not really sure by who, and it shows Kirk in a pressure chamber. Air is being sucked out, and he's being forced to suffocate. Khan wants their help in order to find a planet with a population willing to be led by them. McCoy states, "You mean to be conquered, don't you?" MacGyver is asked to be excused, and Khan is disappointed in her, but lets her leave. The view screen channel is lost, and an augment is about to slap Uhura again, but Khan says it doesn't matter. The captain's dead, and Spock, you're next. Now in sickbay, MacGyver takes out an augment with a hyperspray and releases Captain Kirk. Spock walks in under escort from the other augment, and he and Kirk take him out with the Vulcan nickname. They come up with a plan to gas every deck except their current one in order to make everyone pass out. Back in the conference room, Khan tries to contact the armory, but to no avail. He tries to contact anyone, but nobody is answering. Gas begins pumping into the conference room, and Khan runs. Spock calls Kirk and tells him the gas line to engineering was closed. That must be where Khan is. Kirk runs to engineering. Khan is listening in on communications and is ready for Kirk when he runs in. He easily pushes Kirk aside, grabs his phaser, and crushes it in front of Kirk. He could have just used it on Kirk, but whatever. He's thinking in 20th century terms. An alarm starts beeping. Khan has set an overload, and the Enterprise will explode in a matter of minutes. Kirk tries to disable it, but Khan tosses him aside. Then a fight breaks out between two stunt doubles. Like, obvious stunt doubles. But maybe the TVs in the 60s weren't clear enough to make that out. Kirk does a few of his trademarked clasped hand punches on Khan, but it doesn't really faze him. A little more tussling around, and Khan stops to gloat about how he has 5 times the strength of Kirk. Kirk takes out one of the pipes from an engineering control panel and beats Khan down with that instead. Kablah! Kirk then disables the override. The Enterprise is out of danger. There is now a bit of a hearing at the end of the episode to figure out what to do about Khan. Kirk, Spock, Scotty, and McCoy sit on the hearing panel. Uhura is the records officer. Khan and MacGyver's are on trial, and there is security everywhere. They resolve to drop all charges, but to take them to SETI Alpha 5. They will drop them off, and then allow them to do whatever they want there. Kirk asks if Khan is up for the challenge of taming a world. Khan responds with, "Have you read Milton, Captain?" Kirk nods and says he understands. For MacGyver's, She's offered the choice of going with Khan or going to court-martial. She opts to go with Khan. They close the hearing, and Scotty and Kirk talk about Milton. There's one particular phrase that Kirk pulls up. It is better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. Spock ruminates about returning to the world in 100 years to see what crop has sprung from the seed they have just planted. The space seed, if you will. Name of the episode. The Enterprise warps away, and that's the end of the episode. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for watching Treksplained. If you liked today's video, please drop a like and subscribe so you can get updates on new videos. Let me know in the comments below if you liked the video or if I could improve on things. See you next time on Treksplained.